meeting of the Board of County Commissioners of Lake County, Colorado, May 28th, 2020. First on our agenda today, we have a tourism panel appointment. This is an appointment to fill a vacancy, and the recommendation to the board by the tourism panel is Carrie Malazzi. Commissioner Mudge, do you have any additional information on this appointment?
Carrie has been a long-time community member, worked at HMI, submitted a letter of interest, and is currently, growing a business of her own, using tourism to promote wedding events and other events community-wide. And of course, that's a great partnership with, kind of activating spaces and other new or existing businesses. So I don't really have much more than that, but I think that she would make a great addition to the panel.
Thank you. Commissioner Glenn, do you have any additional information?
I don't have anything.
All right, I will make a motion that we approve the appointment of Carrie Malazzi to the tourism panel.
Second.
All right, so there's a motion and a second on the floor. With that, is there any further discussion amongst board members about the motion on the floor?
I do not have any more discussion. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Glenn, any further discussion?
No, I have nothing.
All right, with no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Wonderful. Thank you very much. Second on our agenda today, we have the approval of the USFS Schedule A contract. Commissioner Mudge, can you and Michael Irwin give us some information on this, please?
Yeah, I'll just give some broad backgrounds. So the Forest Service approached us a year or so ago asking about, any potential partnership, as we all, had talked about. This actually probably has been going on longer, but came back to a head when the office was potentially moving and some changes were being proposed that we advocated for the Forest Service to remain a presence in the community. And Jim Fiorelli reached out to see if there was a partnership that we could develop with some dispersed camping issues to both, protect the environment and the land, and also just make behavior out in the open spaces more appropriate. And so thankfully, with kind of the further project of the water augmentation plan and organizing more Schedule A work and adding U.S. Forest Service Road 125 to Schedule A, which leads up to the Dairy 3 diversion, which is our county water right diversion. We have, agreed to do some work up there with them, and this work that's outlined here is primarily at Half Moon area and the dispersed camping out there, and we are being compensated for that. So with that, I will turn that over to Michael Irwin and let him fill in any other gaps there.
Yeah, so basically what Sarah said was really good and covered everything. Forest Service engineers decided that since we are doing their Schedule A work, which is grading roads for them that we do get compensated on from HETF funds, that they could go ahead and compensate us with money from the Forest Service to do a little bit extra work. They're going to pay us for some road-based material for Half Moon Road. They're also going to do some material at Willis Gulch Trailhead, and then at Twin Lakes at the dam area, just to save some historical things from being damaged at the lake itself, and tightening up the camping areas down there on the south side of Twin Lakes. like I said, they did find out that they could pay us extra to do that out of money that they had for construction. So we are getting compensated for our time and effort. And that just pretty much does it.
All right, thank you, Michael Irwin and Commissioner Mudge. Commissioner Glenn, do you have any comments on the proposed Schedule A road maintenance?
No, I have nothing.
All right. Thank you so much for that information, Sarah and Michael. And with that, I will make a motion that we approve and adopt the contract for maintenance on the Schedule A roads.
Well, I don't know, is that completely accurate or should we, I'm sorry,
No, it's okay.
where's the title here? Michael, do you have the title in front of you? Because it's not just for the Schedule A, it's just for that additional scope of work, right?
Yeah, give me 1 second and I can pull it up
Here,
on my email.
yeah, let me try
Okay.
that. I'm sorry,
Thank you.
Kayla. I'm trying
That's
to do
okay.
like a million things here.
It's
Get
okay.
that up. Okay. Here it is. Okay, I got it. It is, all right. Can I just take a stab at the motion since I have it in front of me?
Yeah, that'd
All
be
right.
fine.
All right. I'll move to approve the partnership in the outline challenge cost share agreement between Lake County and the USDA Forest Service, Pike and San Isabel National Forest, Cimarron and Comanche National Grasslands Leadville Ranger District to perform work to perform work in Lake County. Do I have a second?
I'll second that. Okay, so we have a formal motion on the floor and a second. Is there any further discussion amongst board members? Commissioner Glenn, do you have any further discussion or questions on this partnership for road maintenance?
No.
All right, Commissioner Mudge, do you have any further discussion?
No, I don't. If I could take a couple minutes right after the roll call to comment on a couple other related items, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
Okay.
With that, all those in favor of the partnership for road maintenance between the United States Forest Service and Lake County? Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Mudge, you can have the floor to finish your discussion or talking points.
I just also wanted to take the time to mention, because of some of the discussions on the county water augmentation plan and implementing measuring devices up at Dairy 3 and with the Division of Water Resources and the Forest Service, currently Public Works is replacing culverts and doing some flow maintenance and improvements in Twin Lakes. So that's really good news. It's been a concern of the division for some time now, once we get, our water right established and getting the flow down, just to be sure that we do not have an overflow and any flooding, and that the water is behaving as we anticipate that it would and not causing problems for any of our community members down in Twin Lakes. So that work is happening right now. And I'd also like to take the opportunity to highlight and remind everybody that DRMS is working on the Mineral Belt Trail, and I believe the scheduled date to start is June 8th. So there's been a sinkhole up there for the past couple of years. Road and Bridge and Mineral Belt Trail Committee joined together and purchased 2 of those big steel plates that we have up there currently. And DRMS came in, Craig Bissonette helped facilitate the planning to put essentially a bridge structure in that hole so that it would be a long-term fix, and we wouldn't really have to respond to the subsidence that is a bit unpredictable up there. So that work will start, and I think it'll go on for at least a week. I do have dates. I should have known that. But there will be a detour on the Mineral Belt from 7th Street all the way to California Gulch. There'll be signs, and so we just have to, I'd like to, maybe even Commissioner Marcella put some of those items on the planner or agendas as sort of standing reminders of community reminders.
Sure.
So that we keep pushing that out in communications as well. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, if you want to send me an email with those items, I'll be happy to accommodate those on our agendas going forward.
Great. Thank you. And that is all I have.
Wonderful. All right, thank you very much. We will move into topic number 3, which is selection of Fire Station 2 project management. Let's see here. I just want to see if I have, okay, so I do have Crystal and Chris and Michael on the phone. Okay, so I am bringing to my fellow commissioners today a recommendation of dynamic project management for project management on Fire Station 2 project. We had a very good pool of applicants and RFPs to select from for project management of the fire station, and it took us a little bit of additional time because the RFPs that we received were so good. So we convened a committee of city and county representation to look through those RFPs and score them individually. And then we came back together as a group and went through those scores collectively to eliminate some of our lower scoring RFPs, and we're met with 2 top applicants. The 2 top applicants for the project were NV5 and Dynamic Project Management. And after meeting with both of those firms and asking questions individually, we've made the decision to recommend Dynamic Project Management to my fellow Board of County Commissioners based on their experience in Lake County and being the lowest bidder for the project. Chris and Crystal and Michael Irwin and Sarah Dallas and myself sat on that committee for selection. And if anybody has anything to add at this point, please, that I may have missed, you can jump in and add to that conversation. Crystal, Chris?
This is Chris. Now I'll just echo what Commissioner Marcella said about the decision-making process for dynamic project management. Some of you may know that firm through its principal, Colleen Caneda, who has worked on a variety of projects in Lake County, and in fact, previously was with NV5. And I think one of the distinguishing factors there for us when it came down to it is a number of the projects that NV5 presented as establishing their experience in Lake County were actually ones that Colleen and her colleague who's been proposed to work on the fire station project were involved heavily in as well. So we just felt that all the way around, dynamic project management probably had the level of experience and expertise in managing projects in Lake County to make them a top qualified candidate for this. And again, as Commissioner Marcella said, they were the lowest bidder on the project as well.
Thanks, Chris. Crystal, do you have anything to add? Or Michael Irwin?
No, I don't have anything. You and Chris covered it fairly well. But thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Michael Irwin.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add either. You guys both covered it really good. I think it's going to be really good for the county and for the fire station. So we're good. I like it.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Thanks for everybody's time and dedication to go through that RFP project, and for all the time that we spent going through those proposals and making that such a productive effort. I have to say that that was a very, very wonderful process. So, so with that, I would like to formally move that we contract and engage with Dynamic Project Management for project management of Fire Station 2.
Second.
Thank you. With a motion and a second on the floor, is there any further discussion amongst board members? Commissioner Glenn?
I have nothing.
All right, Commissioner Mudge?
Yeah, I just, I know, we've been, can you remind us of the phases of the scope of work for project management? I guess depending on discovery, or have we not? I know it's been kind of a whirlwind. I really appreciate all the work that's gone into, trying to remedy and get to a place where we can move forward with the project, Commissioner Marcella and Chris Floyd. So are there, what are the first couple of tasks then that Colleen will be tackling?
This is Chris. Well, I was going to say, Kelly, I've got the proposal in front of me, and I was just going to offer that it's actually going to be in 3 phases. Essentially, the first phase will be the initial due diligence to go through and review everything we have and make a determination as to the status of the project right now.
Yep.
And that's the most important, because we have to figure out what the status of the project is so that we can then proceed to work with Dynamic Project Management to put together the RFP for the general contractor. And not knowing what all needs to be done, we just can't proceed with that part yet. Once that is determined, then we will go into the RFP process for the general contractor, and then Dynamic Project Management will move into the construction phase, which is projected probably to take, it's kind of a speculative projection, since we don't know exactly what all work has to be done, but that will likely take anywhere from 5 to 7 months, depending on what's there. So second phase will be engaging the general contractor and going through the construction process, and the third phase will be closeout, which right now is projected to occur sometime late winter, early spring of 2021, I believe. Did I capture that right, Commissioner Marcella?
Yeah, yep, that sounds accurate to me. Yeah, so we're excited to have her on board and get the ball rolling so that we can move into that second phase of selecting a general contractor to finish that project.
Very good. I knew you could summarize that more eloquently than I, looking at the scope of work, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Commissioner Glenn, you have no further discussion or questions?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
All right, Commissioner Mudge?
No, thank you.
Okay. With that, all those in favor of contracting with Dynamic Project Management? Aye.
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 Wonderful. Thank you, board members, for your support in that. I appreciate it. And thank you to everyone that participated in that process and taking time, even through the COVID event, to make the time to go through that process and secure the project management. I definitely am appreciative and thankful for your time. So with that, we will move on to agenda item number 4.
Commissioner Marcel, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Just since we're here, I was just going to ask if then I may be authorized to reach out to Dynamic Project Management to get the contracting process started.
Yes, if you could do that, that would be great.
Okay, will do.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. So with that, we'll move into agenda item number 4, which is St. George's food contribution. And today we have Emily Olson with us, Allie Lufkin, and Susan Fishman. So last week we had a conversation about the need for the county to continue to supplement the food bank at St. George's Church, and we had asked Emily to come back to us with fellow representatives from St. George's Church to talk to us about the food bank processes and need for continued food supply. So with that, Emily, I will turn it over to you all.
Can I just add one thing? I believe that Amy Frickcomb is with us as well. And she's
Oh,
one of our
wonderful.
kitchen
Yes, I'm
supervisors.
here. Okay, great. Thank you so much for pointing that out, Susan. Can you guys give us some background on the work that is done at St. George's and the philosophy with food at St. George's, and how, what the long-term assistance from the county might look like?
I can say a little bit about the philosophy, and then I would invite Amy to say more because she says it so well. And then Emily and Susan to chime in as well on the current situation on the ground, because I'm not there at the moment. The history and the philosophy of this is that we at St. George's long time ago decided that it was important to us to know our neighbors, and knowing our neighbors meant sharing food with our neighbors. And so we began to do that. We began to do that on many levels. At first, our community meals were 1 day a week, and then they went to more than 5 days a week at this point. At first, our table was largely homogeneous, what's the word, where the demographics of Leadville were not reflected in our table. And we did a lot of work to shift that, because we felt as though the table should reflect who lives in Lake County. And so that has been a long process that's been really important to us. I think the fundamental thing I want to say is that it's about relationship, because sharing food is vital to people's health. Breaking isolation is equally vital. And so more happens at the meals than just feeding. Relationships are formed where people discover they're able to serve each other. And a lot of things shift from that standpoint. So going forward, we still maintain that philosophy, which is sharing food in the service of relationship. So I would invite any of the three of you to join in. Amy, do you have more to say to that?
Maybe I would just add that another way of saying what Allie's saying is that while we look like food aid and a food aid organization, we more fundamentally believe ourselves to be a community building organization. And so everything that we do is intended to build community. And we do believe, of course, that by reaching out with food, we are in the work of building community. And during this time of crisis, we just saw that we had the capacity, the resources to reach out in a broader way. And I think that that's what's happened over the last several weeks. And we're still grappling ourselves to try to understand what that means for our operation as a whole, and what that means for our future, how we've been changed now by what we've seen and what we've heard over the last several weeks, and what we should do going forward. Those are conversations that are very much alive for us right now. And I'm not sure how many answers we have to all of that, but just we see now a deeper level of need in our community than we have seen in the past. And I think there's two pieces of that. One is the crisis, of course. The other piece is that we are seeing what we didn't see before. So there's a kind of unveiling or unmasking that food insecurity in our community is much broader and deeper than we had expected and anticipated.
Thanks, Amy.
Emily, do you have anything to add to that, or Susan, any information to add?
I'm more than happy to speak to the numbers if that's helpful. That's been, I think, one of my main roles. And I think we are, again, in May, we are actually on track to exceed the number of households we served in April, which I believe in April we served the same number of households that St. George's served in all of 2019 combined. So we are not seeing a decrease in our community's need for food right now. And we also, in terms of the amount of food that we're distributing, we are distributing about the same amount of food that the school district is giving out each day. When you convert our pounds to meals using the USDA calculator, we're right there with them. I think not counting this week, we've given out around 80,000 meals so far during this time, which, again, the community meals, I think, usually had about 10,000 meals with the hot meals during a year. And if you convert food boxes to meals, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do and is not exact, we've given out about 80,000 meals in the last 10 weeks. And so I think I would just reiterate what Amy said, that I think there is an increased need right now, but I think we're also learning as a community what the true needs are around food, and especially access to healthy food and having the ability to make choices around what your family eats every day. I think we're really learning what our community's true need is right now.
Thank you, Emily.
Thanks, Emily. Commissioner Mudge or Commissioner Glenn, do you have any questions right now at this point? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Susan.
That's okay. The only one thing I wanted to add is not only are we seeing that we're uncovering broader needs in our community, not just during COVID, but I think we're uncovering some other barriers that maybe we have not seen quite as clearly, such as transportation. So that we are delivering about 100 boxes per week to families. And that is not only because they are dealing with health issues, but some of it is because they don't have transportation to come to the pantry themselves or get to Safeway themselves. And we do know this is something that the county and city have looked at for many, many years about our transportation, if there is a need to have transportation within the county. And I think this is uncovering that need as well as a barrier to actually accessing things in town.
Thanks, Susan. That's helpful. I see that Mayor Labbe is also on the line. Him and I have been working on trying to implement a grant, a 5304 study through CDOT and Federal Transit Authority to understand the need of transportation services, and if we feel like we have a high enough need to create potentially like an on-demand service or a fixed route service. So those kinds of things are in the works in the background. Their grant cycle just opened, so we've got to reconvene that now that we're moving further through the COVID pandemic.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, and Kayla, I mean, obviously it's gotten on the back burner for both of us, so I apologize for that, but I think it's critically important. It's a priority, and I hope we can make it a priority again once we're past some of this.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll be able to work through that application process before that's due at the end of June, now that we have some time coming on there, getting into the recovery end of the pandemic. Commissioner Mudge and Commissioner Glenn, what questions do you have right now?
I have nothing.
I don't have any questions.
All right.
I just want to say thank you so much to St. George's and all the volunteers and partners. And it's been amazing to see that response and that coordination. And when the senior center was shut down temporarily too, seeing just picking up those meal deliveries was incredibly valuable, of course. And so I hope that, through this, urgent environment that we've created, some other programs or methods of serving that we can continue that with the senior center. And I'm really excited to see how we develop and address some of those underlying and new items that you're seeing, as you mentioned, Amy. And I'd be really, I'd be really interested in see how we can kind of integrate what you're seeing and be able to quantify that on our part, of course, to make more change and to address those issues. So thank you all.
Thanks, Sarah. I just want to say I really appreciate that, and we should have mentioned the enormous that while we did see this tremendous increase in need, we also saw this tremendous response from the community immediately rising to the occasion, and we've seen so many volunteers driving, picking up, packing boxes, cleaning the space, helping with social distancing. I mean, it's been astonishing, and I hope too that we can use some of that energy and some of that that care that really the community just poured out to develop something from here, to really develop as a community in this direction. And I also wanted to say that as St. George, we're not completely sure. This is the first time that we've ever had so many partners in our work. And we're trying to figure out what that means and what that looks like, and what the benefits and what the drawbacks are, and how we go about this in new ways. And so we just want to keep the conversation alive, I think, and try to understand what these partnerships can and cannot look like, depending on people's different positions vis-a-vis the community meals. We're deeply passionate about this work, and have no intention to stop. One thing that I think a lot of people don't know, and I just want to add, is that the community meals has functioned for a very long time just using food that would otherwise have been dumped. And it's something people just don't recognize, that the US food system is such that we throw away 40% of our food, even while people are going hungry. And so as an organization, St. George has drawn on that for a long time, but the need that we're seeing can't quite be matched right now, not even close, by food that would otherwise be dumped. So we are trying to understand that and trying to create new strategies and so on. So I just wanted to add those pieces.
Thanks,
This
Amy.
is Patrick Smith.
Yeah.
Can I say something? Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just wondering where the funding comes from for St. George's. How are you funded?
I'm trying to see which of us wants to try
Do
that.
you want me to take that as the previous bookkeeper?
Sure. Yeah.
It comes from a variety in general prior to COVID, right? It came from a variety of sources. Obviously, within the Episcopal diocese church functioning, there are church monies that come into the church where other churches, send us some money. And then there's the church way of giving, which is passing the plate. And then we write grants for the community meals. The community meals is its own separate 501c3. And so we write grants for the community meals because we do pay the kitchen supervisors. That's our only employees for the community meals part. And then we have donations from the community and from outside the community, people who have been visitors to Leadville. And so I would say it's really kind of the same amount of breakdown. Now we've had, just like Amy said, an outpouring of physical volunteers. We've also had an outpouring, an absolute generosity of the community in donations to support the amount, because like Amy said, we never had to purchase food before, and now we have to purchase a lot of the food that we are giving out. And so now we have a huge increase in donations from the community and supporters of St. George, increased amount of grants that Emily really has taken the lead on writing specific for COVID relief. We now have received community money from the county has now also helped with the COVID relief, and hopefully FEMA will be reimbursing that at 75%. Did I miss anything, you guys?
The only thing I want to say, Susan, is the community meals is not a separate 501c3.
Oh, it's just the whole church. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so we're a 501c3 under the umbrella of the Episcopal Diocese of Colorado.
And then I'll just add that
thanks for that clarification.
but it is separate. The community meals does function separately from the church. So it's a non-religious organization.
Which is
within-
why, as the bookkeeper for 3 years, I thought it was its own entity. Because
That's
it is, they're really separate
So
budgets.
Patrick, does that answer your question?
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you.
I
Thank
think
you.
I think
Go
the
ahead.
one thing I would add is, we've received this amazing amount of support from community donors, from the county, and from statewide funders and foundations. We've received a significant amount of support from the Blueprint to End Hunger, which is the state's COVID Hunger Relief Fund. While we're doing our best to figure out what our costs are to sustain us, I think the amazing thing about the way in which the county has been able to support us is, unfortunately, the state's hunger relief fund has pretty much dried up at this point. They have not announced another round of funding. And so I think as we move forward, any support the county can give us right now will allow us to allocate funds to continue to meet the need at whatever the level is in the future. Because I think while we might be moving into the recovery phase, I think the food need is going to remain pretty high for a long time. And we've been able to work with Food Bank of the Rockies to make some amazing changes. They're starting next week going to be delivering to us, which is amazing. And we're getting access to some USDA produce boxes and some other types of food. I think the need that we've seen and the cost to meet that need, we will be able to sustain our work and providing people with everything that they do need for much longer if we have county support right now for as long as it allows through FEMA.
Thanks. Oh.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay. Thanks, Emily. I want to ask, I appreciate that. And I think at this point, as we kind of alluded to in our last conversation, the FEMA eligibility has ended, as far as, EOC and emergency management and staff has let us know that. So that unfortunately is we are no longer eligible for reimbursement there. And I know, and I don't, this is not to challenge you all. Nobody is arguing. I don't think anybody could argue that we should not be concerned about meeting needs for our folks. I just, and I'll ask Janine McGee to fill in some of these statistics, but I know, and I appreciate through the relationships and the doors that have been open at St. George's. I think that, as you all know, our SNAP has gone up 52% in this community, which we always knew we were not really capturing or supplying and dispersing that benefit to a large number of our community that could benefit from it and was eligible. So that's incredible, because SNAP can go a very long way, and might help kind of getting people back on that. I hate to say normalcy, track to normalcy. And I know other areas where we've been able to distribute funding through what's available through the state and the county. So I applaud the work, and I know that it's also helped our existing programs reach more folks, and the state has responded with more supply and more into some of those programs that I'm sure Janine could plug in. And again, I am looking forward to really understanding, how we can really capture, new realizations that we have of need, and how we can kind of address that as the county moving forward. And I don't know at this point that we can continue to contribute financially without kind of learning some more there. But I wonder if Janine can fill in here.
Yeah, so again, meeting food needs in a community has sort of a multi-pronged approach, and having access, especially during time of emergency, is critical. The two things that really drove the need to establish this food pantry in our community, and I also just want to emphasize, I was asked last time why St. George is the only place that the county supported purchasing food for, and I just want to emphasize that this has been really a collaborative work, that St. George has done a great job of reaching out to both the Presbyterian Church, Cornerstone, other agencies, and interfaith work to provide this need in the community. So it's not as though it's all been going just in one place, but it's been a collaboration amongst agencies, Senior Center as well. But that during an emergency, you know, when there is a lack of food in the community, in any common area, so like for Safeway, for example, and then there's restricted movement, such as we had with the stay-at-home order, it means that we have to get food to people, or make it available to them wherever they can get to it. And so I think that was a great response. I'm hopeful that we can continue to build on that and grow that emergency response with St. George for disasters. And then with the change in the public health order, allowing more movement and more access to food in the community. So along with the movement also comes folks' ability to access food even outside of the county as well. The other thing, we have seen an increase in SNAP enrollment. We've also are going to be seeing the pandemic EBT program starting up, which is federal government dollars coming into Colorado for every child who was enrolled in free and reduced lunch program. And that household, for every school-age child that was enrolled in the program, will receive $279 per child. It essentially compensates for the time that they were not in school and would have received food. And folks who were not on free and reduced lunch may still be eligible. They can contact the state to find out how they can qualify for that. So that's an additional chunk of money. And the total volume of food assistance in the month of April and the month of May was $106,000 per month. And that's the amount of SNAP dollars that are being distributed in our community on EBT cards before this pandemic EBT program. The pandemic EBT program to start up in the next couple weeks will provide even further assistance for folks. So we are hopeful that people will be able to return to some sense of normalcy in purchasing their own foods, and making those selections. We aren't sure what that will mean to demand at the food pantry and how that will look. We just want to make sure that we are connecting folks with all the resources that are available. And I think that's, you know, a key part of it. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Janine, I just want to jump in because I think something I've learned from you over the last few years in human services, which I may be able to articulate in layman's terms, and maybe kind of an important thing for a mutual understanding of why, you know, it's so important for people to utilize the benefits through the county and through the state, is because if it's kind of like if you don't use it, you lose it. And we know that there's a need, and that's why it's so great that our SNAP benefits have increased so much, because you know, they go through cycles of allocation per county or region. And again, Janine can speak more specifically to this, but you know, it's possible that we could really take better advantage of those programs on a state level. But when we actually are allocating those dollars and have people participating, so getting folks, you know, transition to utilizing those structures and those programs, I think is really important.
Yeah, I think our goal working with St. George and our department has been to get as much food and food access into our county as possible during this time and for as long as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that's the piece of it. And we are happy to help continue in any way that we possibly can, whether it's helping to make those connections, advocating for the food resources that we need. Over and over again, the state has said that there is so much food coming into our state right now. And I know it's not always the exact food we need. You know, we may have a whole truckload of onions, and everybody has to come up with every onion recipe they can think of. But, you know, I think that's a piece of it, is our ability to help at this point will be focused on helping to connect with resources, helping to advocate for what we need to get in the county, and helping to ensure that people have quick and timely access to SNAP benefits, and that we are doing everything we can to facilitate that.
Thanks, Janine. So I guess I have just a couple questions to clarify then out of that information. I just want to clarify that our FEMA funding to allocate to St. George's has run out. Is that correct?
Yeah, the commissioners originally agreed to $12,000, and I think we're closer to 14 right now. So they have committed that, and again, that's up front. We definitely hope that 75% of that will be reimbursed. But you know, this was a long disaster. Typically, in a disaster, we would be evacuating people. We would be feeding them for the time that they are in an evacuation point or in a shelter. We would be feeding first responders, and we may wrap up the whole event within a couple of days. Just depends. We have had fires in other counties that have lasted longer than that. But that's typically how the process would work. And that's essentially what we were asking of St. George in this time. They jumped in and started right away and started feeding folks, but we would typically be able to call them and say, hey, we have a group of people, they need food. Here's how we can, you know, what do you have available? Here's the funding that we have available to cover it. How can we manage this for the time period that we need to feed people during this event? And so as this event essentially winds down, that sort of ends our need for that emergency feeding request that we have through an MOU. So, you know, anything outside of that would not be within the emergency event itself. It would be an additional funding component. While we recognize that folks are still impacted by COVID and that there are still economic impacts, that lifting of the movement of restriction of movement and the food access when it comes to food for this particular event.
Okay, thanks, Janine. And then has there been conversation then around and education around the SNAP benefits that are available to folks that are utilizing St. George's food pantry? And if transportation is an issue, even with the SNAP benefits, is there anything right now from Human Services to assist with that, or what have we seen?
So we don't have the transportation resources. We are definitely working on that as a community issue, I think, also around Medicaid transportation. So we're, you know, just in that conversation, I would say.
In terms of what St. George's has done for outreach, we have some flyers that DHS did make that we have distributed periodically in both the delivery boxes and in boxes that individuals are picking up. We've put them in Food Bank of the Rockies flyers, our Food Bank of the Rockies boxes for individuals to receive. So I think we've really tried to push it out. I think as an organization, it's not, you know, I think Allie or Amy or Susan could speak to this. specifically for St. George's, but from my understanding of SNAP in the community, it's not our role to register individuals for the program, so we can share it with them as much as possible, but that's all we are really legally allowed to do. I think in terms of delivery, Colorado was accepted to allow EBT purchases online. I think it was supposed to start at the end of this month or in June. But I believe the two national vendors who are registered or who can accept SNAP are Amazon and Walmart, and neither of their grocery delivery programs deliver to Lake County. So that is a little bit of a challenge there in terms of the transportation.
And maybe I can just add that maybe it's obvious and doesn't need to be said, but just in case, we at St. George's, we don't see SNAP ultimately as a solution to the problem that we're addressing. So because we're fundamentally, like I said earlier, not a food aid organization, and certainly SNAP addresses food aid, and that's great, but we are a community building organization. So even if everybody had plenty of money and never had to reach out for food assistance of any kind, we would still exist as an organization, and we would still do exactly what we're doing. Because as Ali said, isolation and all kinds of needs come forward when you begin to bring people together into a space in which food is shared. So we don't ultimately see SNAP as the answer to St. George if St. George has something like that. It's a completely separate thing, in my opinion. And while it offers food aid, and I think that's great, and it helps people to, does make a difference in their budgets and so on, that's great. It just doesn't really change what St. George does or is about or is going to continue to do for the rest of its existence. If that makes sense.
Thanks, Amy. That's really helpful to hear. I think that's really important information to share about the philosophy behind St. George's and what we can do on the county end. I think that's really helpful to share. So Emily, do you have an explicit ask of us outside of the knowing that our FEMA funding has ended? What would be our next step to collaborate in that community building effort?
I think it, if the FEMA aid has ended, I don't think we have a specific number. I think in terms of a community that is experiencing a crisis, even if we are moving into the recovery phase, I think it sends an incredible message for the BOCC to support food access in our community. And while it has been a collaborative effort and the senior center has resumed operations, the Presbyterian Church did close their food pantry this week, and they did donate their items to St. George's, and they're supporting us in other ways. But I think especially in terms of relationship building and moving forward and addressing, asking St. George's to play a role in any future emergency responses and participating in emergency response training. I do think that as a community, it's really important for our local government agency to provide some sort of support for the main food resource in our community. And I also think that, it's really great to hear the commissioners speak about how you want to see increased participation in SNAP. And I think seeing some sort of outreach and action there, and I think there's a role that St. George's could play, or that DHS could come and do outreach at St. George's. And so I think seeing some action there would also be really incredible for our community, because, while the community aspect at St. George's, we don't see that being impacted with an increase in SNAP participation. And I think they're quite separate. I do think that perhaps the actual food need of food boxes could go down, even though we continue to do what we do. If there were higher rates of SNAP participation. And I think, the 50% increase is great, but it's definitely not enough in our community given our prior participation rates. And so I think our ask would be, if there is a continued role for St. George's to play in emergency response in our community, that the BOCC show some sort of support for the work that we're doing and our ability to expand overnight like we did, and to try to help to make sure that we are around to continue to do that. And then I also think that the increased outreach for SNAP so that we can continue to enroll people in that program, because it is so important. And I love that Sarah pointed out that if we don't utilize those funds, they go away. And so I think that that's a huge need in our community. And I think maybe Allie or Susan or Amy could speak if there is a specific financial ask for St. George's, they might be able to speak to it more.
No, but I guess there's something that is a little odd that maybe just to point out the weirdness of it is enough, but which is that despite the fact that there is a kind of decision or declaration or a kind of ending of the emergency, we're not seeing a change in people's need or in their showing up and doing really uncomfortable things in order to get food. So I guess I don't fully understand that, and I don't know. I mean, it just seems weird to me that we can say it's the end of the emergency. I mean, at the end of a fire, people get to go home and cook for themselves again. But at the end of whatever it is we're in, people still are lining up for food, and I think that says a lot about the economic condition that we're in, and maybe a different kind of emergency that is facing us.
So do we have conversations to start, like what we do with that anecdotal information and how we move forward to supply that support and make any kind of systemic changes and pursue opportunities as the county to address those, other than continuing to supply food or finances from the county specifically? Because I'm just trying to understand then how, I mean, community, like, you will do what you do, regardless of or whatever, let me say, whatever that need might be. And I mean, I can't, that is so admirable and huge. And I know I lived up the street from there when I first moved here, and 18 years ago, and it was still the same thing. I mean, you've been providing this to the community for so long. It's invaluable. But how do we move from there? And I don't know that anybody really has the answer right now, but just again, like connecting the understanding of our ability and our structure, and then how we, use what we're learning through you to inform and move forward.
Those are great questions, Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I also just want to point out, I think that relationship has really been important. There haven't been many counties which did activate the food purchasing program on behalf of counties. We just knew that we had a limited food supply with one grocery store that had empty shelves. So that was a big part of the need for supplying that. So we have that responsibility during a disaster to provide for mass feeding. And we just jumped in and did that. There are not many counties in the state that did that. Most of them just operated, many food pantries shut down, and many did not activate the FEMA reimbursement dollars for food in their community too. So we did, and I think that a lot of it had to do with our limited access as well.
May I add something?
Allie, were you going to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to, I have a couple thoughts. One is just a very, it's a huge component of what the county has been providing. And while you're talking actual dollars, I just want to point out that another logistic that the county has been helping us with is a lot of transportation needs in terms of loading and unloading deliveries. So for example, this new program that Emily got us signed up for that is going to bring the USDA boxes and the TFAP boxes here. And so the only food we have to purchase is the food that we purchase from Food Bank of the Rockies. They're going to bring a big shipment. And that was under the understanding that we had storage space. And we have a partnership now with the school district that is allowing us to use their walk-in refrigerator and freezer. So Janine, I completely understand where you're coming from, and we so appreciate the financial support, but I am wondering, and maybe another ask and a hope is that, can the county continue to help us take things back and forth between the storage at the district office? It has been so incredibly useful. They are so efficient. And, you know, Mabel has been setting that up for us. Sometimes, like last week, it was literally an hour before I knew we needed that help. And she rallied the troops and they came and efficiently came over to the district office with me and unloaded things. So is that something that can continue even though we're moving into the recovery phase?
I think we can do that as best we can get a schedule, that because Road and Bridge is going to get really busy this summer too. But I think those are the kinds of things that we can offer as support and help, is our time and those kinds of resources as best we can. And you know, the more we have a schedule, and if something's not working for Road and Bridge too, that's where we can get creative and see what other you know, I know maintenance has done it. Roger and his team have pitched in. I think it's good for them as well. So, you know, as community members, it's also good for them to get to participate. Those are the things we can absolutely do for the long term.
That would be awesome. It really is a huge partnership that you have created around that. And so thank you, Janine. That would be awesome. And I think that with the new Food Bank of the Rockies trucks, it is going to be a more regular schedule. And then on the longer term question that you have, Sarah, what I'd say is, and I'm sorry Mara's not here right now, but through Build a Generation, they have been working on a food access coalition. And Sarah, are you the representative on that? Or I thought there was a county commissioner. I thought there was a county commissioner on that coalition, but as we move into recovery, that coalition is going to get much more active, and they're doing lots of surveying and finding out what the needs are, what the barriers are. We have a lot of information that we've gathered at St. George's during this crisis, and like Amy said, we've uncovered a lot of things. But I think in looking at these longer term questions of what our needs are in the community, if the county could be a participant on that coalition and be a thought partner and an active player, I think that's really where we need to go next, because we're all trying to figure this out too, of like, what's the next thing for sustaining all of this.
No, that sounds great, Susan. And I definitely also look forward to an offline conversation with Janine to figure out how, you know, and vice versa. And I know that's not like participating in human services, but how do we bring the best information to that group and really, work through any kind of new and creative structures that we can best serve everyone. And I agree 100% with Janine on the ability to be able to continue to transport and pick up or move food. And I thank you, Janine, for recognizing the season we're getting into with public work. So hopefully we can continue to do that and be as responsive. Thank you, though.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I just want to take the opportunity to say that I'm extremely grateful for the work that you all do at St. George's for our community. It's definitely been wonderful to watch the impact that that's had on so many people, and so I'm really thankful for the work that you're doing to ensure that our community has the ability to meet those basic necessities to assist getting through this time of crisis. So thank you very much for all your work. And I absolutely agree with Sarah and Janine. I think we can continue to coordinate those moving pieces with you all to make sure that we're assisting there. So, and we do have a recovery task force that meets on Thursdays at 3:30. And so once we get further down that framework in the recovery pieces, I would imagine that we will tag into St. George's to see what part you play with that recovery piece. So we'll definitely.
One
Yes.
other piece about that, and I know Janine's on this committee, I don't know who else is, but tapping into the unmet needs committee and getting information from them is going to be important as well, because that is serving a lot of the population that's undocumented and that doesn't qualify for any of the public benefits. And so if we can get a handle of how many people are accessing that, they are probably a lot of the people who are also accessing the pantry, because they're getting dollars to help them with rent and sustain their lives, and then they come and get food. And so I think coordinating with that committee to find out what they're learning, I think there's a lot of information that probably can be gathered, and they're probably learning some of our big needs in town as well.
Thanks, Susan. Hey, Janine, when we hop on that recovery call this afternoon or before, could you and I connect about that unmet needs committee?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, wonderful. All right, and so with that, I think we don't need to do anything further with a formal decision on St. George's at this point. And we will continue to have this conversation going through the recovery phase. So thank you all for joining us today. Does anybody have anything else before we adjourn this afternoon?
Kayla, this is Amber. I just wanted to clarify something about face coverings for courthouse employees. Did we make a final determination on whether or not we needed to order some of the N95 style masks? I'm still trying to connect with the commissioner that Sarah had a conversation with, but I wasn't sure if that was still on the table as something we needed to do.
I think, Amber, that any departments like maintenance or public works who might order those, and Michael Irwin is still on the call and can chime in, and don't already have the supply, great. But if they're not already part of their daily routine or activities in those departments, then I do not believe we need to supply those as face coverings in general, and the disposable ones will suffice. I will also say that a reminder for employers and for us at the county, I'm trying to understand what the inventory is left and if Melanzana is continuing to produce masks, but they do have masks and have been, I just got word that, Melanzana has been distributing to local businesses. So if folks are having a hard time placing orders, don't forget, to reach out perhaps to Melanzana and see what inventory they have. Does that answer your question, Amber? We'll let Michael Irwin, can you let us know if you have a supply issue for N95 masks?
We do not have any N95 masks. Those are basically only going to the hospital staff or first responders.
Medical first responders.
We basically have some masks on order, but I'm sure they're not N95.
Okay.
We can't get those because they're reserved for medical staff.
Okay, so maybe at perhaps public health and or hospital and ambulance service, we should check in with to see if there's a need for an alternate resource.
No, we should have them through the stockpile.
Wonderful.
Amber, I can work with you on that.
Yeah,
if we can get it.
Have it through the state stockpile, the national stockpile, but they're limiting everything to only those kind of staff. We do have orders coming in of masks, disposable masks, but they have not arrived yet.
Okay. Amber, do you want to maybe email Karen or Gary at the hospital and with Colleen and just see if it's valuable for you to continue to pursue that potential source of supply on the N95? And if not, then I don't think that we have an overwhelming need or a specific need to purchase that type of face covering.
Okay, I could do that.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Amber, for asking that. I appreciate it. Is there anything else before we adjourn and move into our 2:30?
I did actually have an update, and I was not able to chat with Amber to give this to her either, but I spoke with Public Works this morning about the project and priorities that we talked about yesterday through rec department programs and projects, and would just like the board to know that I think they've negotiated the storage and the staging out at the ice rink, and the company that's doing the mill overlay will be spreading the ground up asphalt for us over at Huck Finn. And so at a cost of about $5,000, we can reclimate that and cover that with the proper, I'll say adhesive, but it's a spray and tar, whatever it is, to draw the tar out of the product, so that we can get a kind of a paved lot over there. And I would suggest that we allow for the expense of that $5,000 to get that done, since they're doing the labor for us to spread it already. And then we can hold off perhaps on the dog park parking lot and maybe the community field until 2021.
All right.
Does that sound fair?
Yeah, I think so.
Because we budgeted $25,000 for that project overall, and so in essence we'll be banking the $20,000 and applying that $5,000 to leverage with the labor.
Okay. Commissioner Glenn, do you have any questions or comments about that proposal that we had talked about yesterday?
No, I don't have anything.
All right. Thanks for that, Commissioner Mudge. I appreciate it. Abby says hi.
Hi, Abby.
All right, so with that, thank you everybody for your time and your productive conversation today, and for all the work that each of you have individually committed to our work as a county, and to our community. We definitely appreciate you. And so with that, we will adjourn at 2:14, and we will see you at our elected officials and directors meeting at 2:30. Thank you.
Thank you.